Hello and welcome to Vector Tuts Plus. My name is Martin Perhiniak. Today we are going to start a two-part tutorial in which we are going to learn how to design a book cover. We are going to use InDesign, Illustrator and also Photoshop to create the cover itself, and then also we are going to learn how to design a 3D mockup or a visual like this. In the first part, we are going to concentrate on the cover itself, and then in the second part of this tutorial, we are going to design the spine and the back and create this 3D mockup in Photoshop. But first things first, I would like to create the document in InDesign. So let me just go back to InDesign. And by the way, at the bottom left corner, you can always see what keys I press on the keyboard. Because I use a lot of keyboard shortcuts, it's good to keep an eye on them. So for example, now I press left arrow, you can see it's already visible there. By the way, I wanted to mention that this design is inspired by a project that my wife was working on recently. Now let me go to the File menu and choose New Document. And then in the new document, I have the more options selected. And then I am going to type in the size of the cover in millimeters. So 254 will be the width, and it will be 381 for the height. And it's obviously a portrait format. And I am going to use bleed as well, and I use 5mm bleed on all sides. The margins can stay as the default values, and I am going to use facing pages, but the number of pages first is just going to be set to 1. We will create the spine and the back later on. I'm going to click on OK, and as you can see, we already have our design. Now maybe I will need to change the size of my margins. Now, of course, this is not like the only standard book cover size. I just use these values. It's quite a big format. But for this big format, maybe we will need to change the margin size as well. So if I want to do that, I can always go to Layout and choose Margins and Columns. There I can increase the size. I will probably use something like 20 millimeters. And then I click on OK. So that fits much better for this size. Now, first of all, I will put the text in, and as you can see here in the previous design, we had this text here on the top. So let's just design that. I'm going to use the type tool, press T as you can see, and I click and drag to create the frame for it. And I will start typing in the gift of breakup. Okay, I will make this text bigger. So I'm going to use Command Shift and full stop several times. And I can see I'm missing an O there. So now I have the text written here. And now I will change the font itself. So I'm going to press Command 6, so Control 6 on PC. But for that, I will need to also make sure that the character formatting control is selected. So Command 6 and start typing TR, which will select Tryon Pro. Then I press Enter. Now I can make my text a little bit smaller. And for the gift word, I just double clicked on it to select it. I will change the font to Savoy. That's another nice font. Now I can make this font bigger, so it's probably need to be actually much bigger, the gift word itself. And then I can probably set it to something like this. Let's just have a look at the previous one. The word itself can be smaller, it's not that important, and of can be the same size as well. So I set them to 36. I set the whole text to centered. So here on the top, I set it to centered. And notice that I have my text frame inside the margins. So it will definitely be in the center of the page as well, because it's already aligned to the margins on the sides. And then I press Command B to enter the text frame options. And here I choose also a vertical justification center, which means the text will be in the center of this frame as well. Now, if I zoom a little bit closer here, then you can see the gift and breakup is much bigger than the and of. So I am going to use a baseline shift on off and the. I select it off and I use Alt Shift up arrow a couple of times, probably 4 times will be enough. And I do the same with the Alt Shift up arrow 4 times. That's the baseline shift. So I have everything in place. I just press the escape and I'm going to press Command 0 to see the whole page again together. If I press W, I can see the preview without all the non-printing elements. If I press W again, we can see the normal version or the normal view. Now, I'm going to use the same type for the author. So I Alt-click and drag down. And for the author's name, I'm going to use again Tryon Pro. So I just type in the name of the author. By the way, it's a fictional book, so I just use my mom's name. And for now, I'm not worried about the colors. I just would like to see the layout of the book. I might need to change the size of the text a little bit later, but for now it works. Now, I just switch back to the original design, and here you can see that I used 3 graphic elements. I used the ribbon, I used this little label, and the key. These are both images from PhotoJune. So I use PhotoJune for the ribbon and the golden key. And I can create the other 2 elements in Illustrator or even in InDesign. Let me show you how I designed that stripe here in InDesign. I'm going to use the rectangle tool, and from the bleed, it's important that you should start from the bleed, this type of element, whatever reaches the edges, to make sure whenever it gets trimmed on the edges of your trimmed paper, there won't be any white lines. Okay, so we have this rectangle here, and the bleed edges are marked with red here in InDesign, and the rectangle is touching those edges. And once we have this rectangle, we can assign a color to it. I go to my swatches panel, and from here I'm going to select the red for the color, but now it's assigned to the stroke. If I want to switch the color to the fill, I just press Shift X. So Shift X will switch it onto the fill color. For the stroke, I would like to use another color, probably yellow, and just increase the stroke size up until we can see that color well. And if I want to change the stroke, I can also go there. And instead of align stroke to center, I'm going to use align stroke to outside. So I would like to choose that. And let's have a look at this. It looks good, but that yellow is probably a bit too bright on white background. So I am going to create a new swatch in InDesign for this stroke color. So I am going to click on New here in the swatches panel. Click on New Swatch and double click on that swatch. I would like to have it a little bit more orange. So I added a little bit of magenta. I will click on OK. And as you can see, it's already updated for my stroke. And if I press W again, that looks already much better. Now is the time to use the same 2 colors for the text on the top and the bottom. And we can also delete all the other unnecessary colors from the swatches panel. I make sure that nothing is selected in my design. And I select the colors which I don't need. Holding down Command or Control on PC, I can select all the colors I don't need. Okay, so we have the red and the orange, and of course we have black and the paper colors because we might need these later on. And here these little icons show that these are all made up of CMYK values, which are perfect for print. Whenever you see RGB here, you should be careful because it's good for an interactive document, but not for something which you would like to send to a print house. Okay, so this is ready. Let's just select this word gift and add the orange color to it. And then I'm going to select this part, add the red color to it, and select that one, again red, and select this here and add red to it. Okay, so that looks good so far. Let me just see the previous version. Okay, so we're getting closer to this. Maybe the title itself can be a little bit bigger. So I select the whole thing together and I'm going to use Command Shift and full stop until I reach the edges of the margin, just to maximize the size of my text. Let me see it. Okay, and I can also move this up a bit until it reaches the margins. With this, again, I just have more space on my design, and I can even move the label up. While I'm moving the label, I'm holding down Shift to make sure I'm not moving it left and right, only up and down. Okay, so everything seems to be in place already. Now we can add the other graphic elements. Let me just show you the final version. So let's just create the ribbon or use the image that we have for that. Going back to Bridge. And whenever I design something, I always have a folder called links when I design in InDesign. And in this links folder, I always keep the images that I'm going to use in my design. Now, this is the image of the key. And I am going to open this up first in Photoshop. So I double click on it because I would like to get rid of its background. Now, to get rid of the background, it's quite simple. We can go to Select menu, choose Color Range, and click on the background. As you can see, it selected almost everything already, but because there are some sparkling little elements on the key itself, we might be better off using another way of selection. I am going to select the Magic Wand tool and turn off Contiguous option and set the tolerance to something like 30. Then I click on the background, and as you can see, Magic Wand again did the same thing as color range, that it went into the key and selected all those little parts there. If I turn on Contiguous and deselect this and select again, then it will stop at the edges and it will only select the background. Now that's exactly what I want, but I also need to select these little parts in between or these little holes. So for that, I need to hold down Shift and then click on these parts one by one. So that part is done. Let me go to the left and again, Shift click on these parts. Now I can turn this into a mask, and the way I can do that is by just simply clicking on the mask icon here at the bottom of the layers panel. And once that's done, I can press Command I or Control I to change the colors of the mask. So that means now the background is hidden and the key is visible. If I press Command S, I can save this into a PSD file into my links folder. And that's exactly what I want, because in the PSD file, I will have the mask and I can always come back and make changes to it. So now I can close this document, go back to Bridge, and from Bridge, just select this file and drag and drop it into InDesign, where I can draw a little frame for it, and I can already rotate it and have a look where to place it. Something like that. If I zoom closer, we can see we did quite a good selection on it. So I just zoom back to see the whole page. And now we are going to design or create the ribbon itself. So I'm going back to Bridge again, and I'm going to use this image. So I'm going to double click on it, and we will add this bow onto the ribbon in our design. Once again, here we will have to make a selection. And I would like to also use this little string, which we can create separately as well, but once we have it here already, we can just use the same thing. Now for the selection here, what I'm going to do is again use the Magic Wand tool and click on the background, white background, and I click on these parts again until I can fill up every original background elements and have a good selection. Something like that will work well for us. We zoom out and turn this into a mask and then press Command I. So that's a quite good selection. And what we can do is zoom a little bit closer and get rid of this white part here as well. While I have the mask selected, I can press Alt Backspace to get rid of that part there. I filled it in with black color. That's my foreground color. Now that I have this already, I can also get rid of this label because I would like to use a different label. So what I'm going to do is first of all extend the canvas of this image. I use the crop tool and drag it down a bit, and then I turn the whole image until it's facing me like that, and then I move it down a bit. Okay, we can already save this as a PSD file again in the links folder, and then I can get rid of this label here. Now, the way we can do this is quite simple. All I need to do is make a selection. So I'm going to use the lasso tool and make a selection of the unwanted parts. So I'm going to make a selection like that. Because I was zoomed in too close, I'm going to hold down Shift and just add that part as well to my selection. Now I'm going to select the mask again and I press Alt Backspace. So now it's all prepared. So we have only those parts from this image what we need, and I am going to press Command S again to save it. I would like to design the keyhole here, and because if you remember, let me just show you, there was a keyhole. That's mainly because we have this tagline that when one door closes, many others open. So that's why we have that little label in the shape of a keyhole. So let me design that in Illustrator, and then we can put it into Photoshop. So I'm going back to Illustrator and I'm going to create a new document here. It doesn't really matter what type of document we create. And first of all, I'm going to show my rulers, which is Command or Control R, and then drag a ruler out. This will be the symmetry, the center of the symmetry. And I use the pen tool to draw the shape. So I start like that, and then I draw the shape. Let me just go back quickly, check my shape. Maybe it's a bit further down. And now comes the part when I can hold down or click and hold down the mouse to create a curve, and then click and create another curved segment like that. Okay, now we can use the direct selection tool and move things around a little bit. Okay, it's just a very simplified keyhole shape. And I am going to adjust this here on the top as well a little bit. I would like to make sure it's going to look nice when it's symmetrical. Okay, now we can select this and use the reflect tool, which is under the rotate tool. Click on the center line and then click and drag this to the right. Hold down Shift and Alt to duplicate it. So now we have a nice symmetrical shape, and we can add this together. So I can select the two parts. Actually, now we can get rid of the guide. So we can go to View, Guides, Clear Guides. Select the two parts together and use the Shape Builder tool, click and drag to add them into one. Now, if I use the pen tool and hold down Alt and click on that point on the top, I can drag out new anchor points, and something like this will nicely even out the top. Maybe we can also use the direct selection tool and just move it up a bit until it becomes nice and curved. So that looks good to me, but maybe altogether the shape should be a little bit narrower. So I just selected it with the path selection tool and we made it narrower. If I want to, I can even select these 2 points with the direct selection tool and I can move them up and down. Let me just check again in InDesign that my shape is a little bit different. So I'm going to move these up a little bit, something like that. And I think that will work. Let me check again my original design. Even the curves are a little bit different, and I can adjust these handles just to resemble more my original design. Okay, so that will be fine for now. And I am going to copy this and use it in Photoshop. So I just copy and go to Photoshop and paste. And I'm going to paste it as a shape layer. Okay, so we have a nice shape layer. And I'm going to pick a color from this red and press Alt Backspace to fill in this shape with that. Now we can make this bigger. So let me just use Free Transform and make it bigger. And I think that's a little bit too big. I think I designed it smaller. Something like this will work. Let me just check in InDesign again. Yep. And then we can use the same stroke around it as on the ribbon. So I double click here on the layer and choose stroke and then set the stroke to the same orange color. The way I can do that is by copying the CMYK values from InDesign. So I switch back to InDesign and I'm going to select from this document the swatch that we have. So it's 0, 34, 100. So 34, 100, that's the only thing we need. So 34 magenta, 100 yellow, and 0K. I can click on OK, and we already added the stroke, but it has to be bigger, and I rather have it inside. So I'm going to set it bigger. Something like that works fine. Okay, now we can put this below the other image, and from this image we will need to get rid of this red part. So I'm going to select the image, use magic wand again, and actually I turn off the shape layer for now, and selected this red part here, select the mask and press Alt backspace again. Okay, now we can turn back the shape, and it already looks good. The only thing what we need is from this shape we have to get rid of that little circle in the middle, and the way I'm going to do that is using a shape option. So I'm going to select the ellipse tool, and from the path operations I'm going to choose subtract front shape. I'm going to hold down Shift and space to move this circle in place, and once it's there I'm going to subtract it from the shape that I created in Illustrator. And you can see how well all these three applications work together. The only problem now is that we have this yellow outline twice. First of all, we have it from the image. Let me just show you. Okay, from the image. And then we have also this stroke effect, which just copies the same what we had on the outer edge of this vector shape. So instead of adding this circle here, I'm going to delete it, and I am going to show again the image. And what we are going to do is create a pixel mask on this vector shape layer, and use the elliptical marquee tool and draw a circle a selection, and then press Alt backspace to fill that in with black. Now it looks like it's exactly the same as before, but because we used a pixel mask, we can double click on this and choose Layer Mask Hides Effects. It's a very useful option inside the layer style options. So let me show you again without that option and with that option. Okay, so now we don't have it duplicated, we just have it exactly the way I wanted it. So there's the bow and also the label nicely designed from an original stock photo and the design that I created in Illustrator and in Photoshop. I would like to keep everything intact, so it's completely non-destructive, all the editing I've done, and I save this Photoshop file, and then I close it and go back to Bridge. And from Bridge, I just need to drag and drop it into InDesign. So I'm going to drop it here. I make the frame a little bit smaller because there's some unnecessary parts in this image. And I am going to move the key away for a bit on the side. I would like to set the size of the bow and this label up properly. So something like that. The way I can resize images in InDesign is holding down Command and Shift and drag the corners of the frame. And I think that would be a good size, but obviously the name of the author will have to come down. Again, I can use the margin to align it, and I can have the name a little bit bigger, something like that. Okay, let's have a look at the image again. I can move everything down a bit, so I select the ribbon and the bow and move them down. And I also make sure that this is in the middle, so I'm going to align this object. And what I need to do is choose the Align panel, and from the Align panel I choose Align to Page, and then I click on this option, Align Horizontal Centers. So I click on that, and then it will be placed exactly in the center. Probably I can move them a little bit even further down. Okay, something like that. Now all I need to do is to add the text in the middle. But before I do that, I would like to also make sure my layer structure is good here in InDesign. Usually what I do is I have the type layer on top, then I have image in between, and at the bottom I have background elements. In this case, the stripe would be a background element. The text of course, would be on the type layer. So I selected these two parts and I click and drag that little indicator, which will place them onto that layer. And then the bow and the label will be on the image layer. Okay, now we can even lock these two layers, the image and the back, so I won't accidentally move them around. And then I can use the type tool, select the type layer, and then drag and draw a frame for my text. I'm going to select Bebas, which is another font, which I would like to use for this. And let me just check what was written here. It's when one door closes, many others open. Okay, so let's just type that in. When one door closes, many other opens. Okay, and we just need to zoom closer to be able to see this text. Okay, there's the text, and I'm going to make this much bigger. So let me set it to something like this. Maybe that's a little bit too much. Yeah, that's looking better. I set it to center, and I am going to divide the text a little bit more. Select everything and hold Alt down arrow, press that a couple of times. That's the leading, something like that. And then I can maybe just go back and just decrease the leading a bit and just move down the text itself, and maybe make the whole thing a little bit smaller. Align it a little bit more, like that. And then we can use the same color on it. I'm going to use for the text, I have the type selected, so formatting the type's color, and then change the color to this orange. So now if we zoom out, let's just see how it looks. And it looks quite good. If I compare it to this, here I used a little bit different color on it, but doesn't make much difference. But we can always use a different color by selecting the type and then create a new swatch for it. And I'm going to make this a little bit more brighter, something like that. And that's getting closer to what I had originally. Okay, now what we need to do is adding the key back again. So I'm going to select the key, which is on the back layer. I'm going to select it and move it onto the image layer, lock the back and the type layers, and then move the key in place. Okay, somewhere there I think it will work. We can make it a little bit smaller, something like that. I think that looks quite good. And now we are ready officially with the cover, and we are going to continue from this point in the next part of this tutorial, when we are going to design the spine and the back, and then at the end we are going to create a 3D mockup, which is going to look like this. I've shown this in the beginning. So thanks a lot for your attention. I hope you managed to follow me. Of course, it was a really fast tutorial, but that's the advantage of a video tutorial. You can always go back and listen to my instructions again. So thanks a lot for your attention, and I hope you will join me next time as well.